Thank you for having me on the agenda tonight. Thank you, as many of you know, we just got sworn in the beginning of January for another 2-year session. I want to thank everyone, the community, the council, and everyone for their support in my re-election and going forward, and crafting legislative ideas and things that we we do a lot of work together as a community, and it's important that things like Airbnb and the short-term rental legislation that we just got done, and I'll talk about that later. That is because of the community's work, not any one individual or anything. It's a collective group that works together, and I appreciate all that all that support and all that help in the legislative process. I also want to thank the council, the members of the council, for your service to the council, to the neighborhood. I sat in your shoes for 5 years, which I reiterate every time I come here, because it was such an important time for me to understand the neighborhood's needs and wants and things that we had to work on together. I learned so much from doing that for 5 years here on the council, and I thank you all for your service. It's can be thankless sometimes depending on the issue, especially when we get hot issues that come in front of this neighborhood, but I truly do appreciate that. And I appreciate the work that we've done together over the years to better the neighborhood. So I try to come to all my neighborhood associations in my district, which is actually I think like 12 or 13 throughout my entire district, including the 2 here in the North End, Neighborhood Council in Newra. I'll be going to Newra on Thursday. And I'd like to come and just give a brief understanding of what I filed, some of the things I filed. This is just a snapshot. I filed about 20 some odd bills for the new legislative calendar, and but these are like a handful that I think are important to the district, or to the neighborhood in particular, that I like to highlight. Before I do that, I do just want to talk a little bit about the short-term rental Airbnb legislation that we did finish. It got signed by the governor on December 28th, I think it was. It passed the House and Senate on December 21st. And I think he signed it on December 28th, and it will go into effect on July 1st for the taxation, for the regulations, and the registration piece will go into effect on September 30th. Every short-term rental in the Commonwealth will have to be registered by September 30th, and will be public on a website for everyone to look at and to view exactly where short-term rentals are taking place. Airbnb is obviously the common phrase, but there are dozens of online portals, including Craigslist is one of them, where you can go and do a short-term rental. So when we say Airbnb, we really mean the whole host of different types of online portals. And the key components of it, I believe, are the fact that you will have to register every unit, so the public will have a chance to look at it. It'll work hand in hand with the city of Boston in this case, because the city is doing their thing, and I applaud the mayor and the councilor and all the work that they've done related to this. But it's also because Airbnb just recently sued the city of Boston. I think the state backing up the city related to that is going to be important and is very valuable. There is a taxation piece which will be in line with hotels, where you'll have for a one-night stay, there'll be a 5.7% state tax, and then up to 6.5 in the city of Boston, 6.0 in other municipalities across the Commonwealth, in a municipal tax as well. And basically, if you have whatever level you have it at the hotels, you will have it at the short-term rental as well. We're hoping that it will raise. Conservatively, we think it will raise $50 million in revenue for the Commonwealth, 25 for the Commonwealth, 25 for the municipalities. We actually probably think that that's maybe an underestimation. We'd rather underestimate and have it clear that benchmark easier than go the other way, because some cities and towns, Boston being one of them, the Cape, I think that this is going to be a nice piece to it of revenue for the municipalities individually. One piece that I'm proud of, because we're not only the first state in the country to regulate short-term rentals, but we are the first state in the country to also have this piece that we fought very hard on, which is on second units. If you are registering more than one unit in one municipality, so in Boston's regulations, you can do 1 + 1. You can do owner-occupied, and then you can do basically +1 in one unit. That second unit, the municipality has the option to raise an additional 3% of tax revenue on that second unit. And a portion of that funding will go directly, will be earmarked directly for affordable housing components in that local municipality. The reason we feel that is important is because those second units are the ones, second, third, fourth, or fifth, actually. It's not just the second, it's not just the second. It can be, but in Boston there will only be, you know, by the regulations there will only be 2. But that second, third, and fourth unit, we believe, are the ones that are taking away the housing stock, that are affecting, you know, our ability to, you know, people are renting out buildings, you know, buying up buildings, renting out entire buildings and making them, you know, de facto hotels. We're not here, from the state's perspective, we're not here to tell the municipality whether they can or can't do that. Boston's been very clear on what they want to do. But we believe that if you are going to allow a second unit, we think that there should be an option to take some additional revenue and pump that into affordable housing to offset some of those housing concerns. Like I said, we are the first state in the country to do something like that, to tie affordable housing, short-term rental revenue to affordable housing. And so we feel that that is something that is important, and we're hoping that we'll see that maybe trend continue in other states. Excuse me. The taxation will start July 1st. All the regulations, including insurance, you'll have to have $1 million policy of insurance on every unit, and those will all take place July 1st. The registration, like I said, will not have to be done until September 30th. We're trying to give the state DOR some time to kind of craft that and make that a reality. So that's kind of the short-term, or not the short-term, short-term rentals, the short version of the legislation. A little more comprehensive than that, but I'm happy to take any questions related to that as we move forward. On the things that I filed going into this session, and I highlight the first one, which is re-precincting. And it's something that I've actually filed over the years, and it's never really gained any traction. I'm hoping to kind of push it forward this session. Re-precinct in the city of Boston. Boston has been exempt from re-precincting since 1940. Every 10 years we do the census. And every municipality besides Boston is then required to take their city or town and cut it up evenly. So you have 10 precincts, all 10 precincts are even. You know, in some smaller municipality. Obviously, Boston is much bigger and it's much more challenging. But in 1940, they decided to exempt Boston from doing that. So what you have as a result is you have precincts where development has taken place over the last 80 years. That some precincts are much more populated than others. For instance, we have 4 precincts here on the north end. We have 3-1, 3-2, 3-3, and 3-4. 3-1 is the biggest precinct. I live in 3-1. 3-1 is the biggest precinct in the neighborhood. It is probably almost equal to the other 3 combined. And why is that an issue? Because when you go on election day to vote, in terms of timing wise, you're competing with a much larger precinct, and therefore you have you probably are going to wait in a longer line based off of the demographics or the constituency of that precinct. And it's a voter inequity issue where someone who lives in 3-2 doesn't have to potentially wait as long as the line versus someone in 3-1. Well, we all don't have that much time in the day to go vote, and voting is obviously very crucial and very important. And things have gotten a little easier because of early voting, which I think has been a huge step. But if we could have those 4, for instance, we could have those 4 precincts divided amongst evenly, everyone's on the same kind of playing field, on a level playing field in terms of timing, in terms of getting to vote. Another reason why this is important, I have a precinct which is Ward 3, Precinct 6, which has a back of Beacon Hill, and it goes up towards downtown, like Devonshire Street and all that area, and then it goes all the way to Harbor Tower. So people that live in the back of Beacon Hill, behind the State House, when I say the back of Beacon Hill, behind the State House and Harbor Tower, all vote at City Hall. So they all have to go to City Hall, coming from different areas. Well, those people in the back of the State House at Beacon Hill, they actually walk by a polling location, which is the West End Library, to get to City Hall, City Hall Plaza, which doesn't make any sense. And so it is important for us to try to create as much equal opportunity, as much voter equity as possible. And I think re-precincting would potentially do that. And the reason why we're making a push for it now is because the census is coming up for 2020. Obviously, that as we do it every 10 years. And then those lines will have to be redrawn, whether they're city council lines or state rep lines or state senate lines. All those lines will have to be redrawn, and we want to try to have that done before they redraw those lines after the census. So that's why we're making a push for it this year, or for this session, hopefully by next year, to try to get these things exempt. I'm sorry, it's been exempt since 1921, not 1940. My apologies. My second bill that I have in here is traffic violations. We want to open up. Increase the fines for traffic violations in the city, in the Commonwealth, but obviously for the city of Boston. and give the municipality some more flexibility in giving some of these, blocking the box in particular. We feel that the congestion is a huge issue for us in downtown Boston and in the neighborhoods that I represent in downtown Boston. Blocking the box is a huge issue. Right now, I think it's only a $150 fine. We want to increase that to $500, and we also want to add a couple insurance points to your driving record if you are caught doing that. We feel that $150 is not a deterrent. It's not been raised in, I want to say, in over 25 years, and adding a couple insurance points to a driving record, prevents, goes a long way in making sure that people are nervous about not blocking the box. So that's something that we want. We also tied in things that I've worked on with Mary Ann D'Amato related to violations of people in crosswalks and not adhering to the crosswalk or permitting violations for people in crosswalks. Commercial wharf is a real local issue down to the actual commercial wharf itself, and not going to affect anybody else but the people on commercial wharf. Right now, there's a dispute going on between DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, and the people of commercial wharf. DEP, over the years, gave minor modifications to commercial wharf to allow residents to avoid Chapter 91 or to make modifications to the Chapter 91 license. Which, just for clarification, Chapter 91 is it's about basically watersheds and access to the water. And what it requires is that everything that's has direct access to the water has to have commercial use or public use on the first floor. You cannot have residential on the first floor. That's why you see, for instance, Lewis Wharf has all commercial use on the first floor. Pilot House is, we have many meetings in the back of Pilot House because that's basically in essence because of Chapter 91. Over the years, DEP, previous administrations gave people at commercial wharf an ability to change over the commercial usage on the first floor to residential. So you have a handful of units that are on the first floor of commercial wharf that are residential, and those were all done in legitimate through a legitimate process of DEP, and now DEP is saying that they in essence they want to make them go back to being commercial. Well, some of these people paid a pretty penny for those units, and they weren't for commercial space; they were for residential space. So I'm trying to figure out a way to not necessarily exempt them, but to try to build off those modifications that were done in the past and make those legally exempt from Chapter 91. So we're working on that. It's filed legislation. We've done that in the past. We're hoping that maybe by filing legislation we can kind of get to a final solution between the residents of commercial wharf and the Department of Environmental Protection. Peer-to-peer car sharing is a new industry. I did Uber 2 sessions ago. I did Airbnb last session, so I'm going to try my hands at another emerging technology. And companies like Toro and GetAround are peer-to-peer car sharing. They're basically like Airbnb for cars, where you have your own car, you can put it up on a company website like Toro or GetAround, and someone will rent your car from you, for a certain amount of for a day or two or whatnot. But right now there's no regulations around it. There's no insurance regulations around it. So we want to codify some of those, create some regulations around it for safety and consumer protection pieces. And in relation to inequity versus the car rental business, where the car rental business has certain fees that go on car rentals that particularly go to the convention center or whatnot, we think that this is an opportunity for us to raise some fees, potentially to go toward the MBTA and Regional Transit Authority across the Commonwealth. We said it's $1 a day, but that's just, since it's a new industry, we're kind of having conversations with them and trying to see what would be the appropriate way to land on that. Some of these other things I filed in the past, and on the back I've done some of the co-sponsorships that I've part of in Climate Resilient Plan, the ROE Act, wage theft, which is something I actually I filed myself in the past, but have turned it over to another colleague of mine to file, and lift the cap. These are things that I think are important for us in the House that we should be working on going forward, and these have been some of my priorities for the next 2 years. But more importantly, I want to hear from the community. You don't have to tell me today. I'm open up for questions if that's okay. But other than that, happy to in the future have conversations related to what we should be working on at the State House with my dear friend Senator Boncory, who I know Luigi's here from his office.
So before we do open up, I want to thank you for all that work on Airbnb or short-term rentals, because especially in this community, I mean, that's a very big issue. So the fact that you're able to do that, thank you very much, and especially the other folks that are in the room that helped do that. That's going to be a huge thing. So I really appreciate all the work you've done on that.
And the questions don't have to be necessarily legislative related, you know, community related, what's important to you, but you know, I'm here, so.
Yeah. What do you officially endorse as the best pizza in North? Does anyone on the council have questions? Does anyone on the council have questions for our representative?
No, just thank you.
Thank you, and question.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about the Turo and get around ride sharing apps, the exemption from car rental fees, $10 a day. Can you go over, like, do they have any place where they charge $10 a day to anyone renting cars?
No, so in the city of Boston, if you rent a car in the city of Boston, you are charged. If you rent a car once, or if you join one of the, so there's three different categories. There's car rentals, there's peer-to-peer, and then there's also car sharing, which is like Zipcar. So in car rental and in Zipcar, if you rent a car one time in the city of Boston, or if you buy a membership for a year with a car sharing entity, you have to pay a $10 fee that goes towards the convention center. I have filed a bill in the past that would exempt Boston residents from that $10 fee. When they did that fee, it was 1997. The convention center hadn't been built yet, and it made complete sense. And it was trying to really go after tourists that were coming into the city, charge them $10 to rent a car, and then have that money go to help build the convention center. The convention center's been built. There's obviously expansion talk and whatnot, but the convention center has been built. I feel it is important that the Boston residents, and because we're trying to get off of having individual cars and we want to have more opportunities for people to do, you know, car sharing or peer-to-peer or just renting cars on occasion. You know, I don't use my car nearly as much as I have in the past, and I know a lot of people, you know, are in that same boat. You know, we want to make it easier, so we feel like Boston residents should be exempt from that $10 fee. We've rolled that into this bill because we kind of feel it comes together in that same discussion.
Yeah, I just want to make, especially for like with the Airbnb stuff, when people are coming in,
Yeah.
they're just going to rent the car too, so they get the Airbnb and get their Turo.
Yeah, no, it does. So if you're not a Boston, from this bill, if you're not a Boston resident, then you will still get the $10 fee. To be perfectly honest, I don't represent those people, so.
That's right. Now is that like for like the airport too? Is that
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that applies for the airport as well.
That's the way that works.
Anyone in our audience have any questions or comments for the state representative? Victor?
Yeah, thank you. I could wait till Thursday, but I can't.
Do it easier now.
Okay,
There's
sure.
more probably plenty of questions.
Yeah, I know it's coming till Thursday. Someone told me, who it is not important, that you had filed a different bill for the commercial wharf protection this year. Is that so?
I did not file that.
Or
A colleague of mine filed it. They asked me if they could file it. I told them, you know, you file away. I mean, those are my constituents. So obviously, I hope that those, you know, that my legislative priorities take shape in my district more than someone else's. But you know, they asked me if they could file it for. I think they were doing it on behalf of the people that have the yacht haven. My bill is filed on behalf of the people of Commercial Wharf, of the residents of Commercial Wharf.
Can Patrick get me Patrick?
We'll get you. Yeah, there is some differences on it.
Okay.
I support my bill, but I'm open for conversations to try to make this to get this problem solved because it's been laying out there for quite some time, and it got elevated a little bit when we filed it last session. But I'd like to see this come to a resolution for all parties involved, but in particular from my constituents.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
And the other was, is the state a defendant in any of the short-term rental litigation? That is, so the Attorney General's office has to get in and defend?
Not yet, no. I will say, would I be shocked if Airbnb decided to take their lawsuit pattern to the state. I wouldn't be shocked about that, because they have taken on virtually every major metropolitan city, and again, like I said, including Boston, that has done regulations. In particular around the registration, it's an argument about whether their data should be public, you know, because that's basically what it comes down to, like people's, how much they're registering, who's registering, that kind of information. They may take that to the state level. They have not said said that yet. But if I found out tomorrow they were doing it, I wouldn't be completely shocked. And in that case, that would be the AG's office that would be defending the state in this issue. In this case, it's the City of Boston Law Department that's doing it. So,
Okay, thanks.
thank you. Any other questions?
While the rep is here?
All right. Thank you for your time. I appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much.